What is going on, YouTube? This is Jim, and today we're taking a look at Atlas West's newest game that was announced during the, I think it was announced during the Game Awards, maybe. It kind of looked like Fire Emblem. It kind of looked like Project Octopath Traveler, but no, this game is called Unicorn Overlord. Now, horrible name for a game, in my opinion. At first, I thought it was some kind of weird meme or joke, but no, you're seeing it right there on the screen. That's actually the name of the game. It is, in fact, Unicorn Overlord. And from the demo, I got a pretty good sense of what the game would play like. And I have to say, for me personally, I'm not as excited as I thought I was going to be. I thought this was going to be a much heavier kind of Fire Emblem clone, more on a unit based, where you're laying out in a battlefield and you're selecting individual units and kind of moving them around to, you know, attack enemy forces. That's not what this is. This is taken up like one level higher than that, where you have predetermined groups of heroes and you move the entire pack of heroes essentially across the battlefield. And the heroes themselves and their attacks and everything is what you're kind of laying out, but from a macro level. And it didn't really resonate with me as much as Fire Emblem did or as Advance Wars did. And that's, to me, why I don't think I'm going to like it as much. That doesn't mean it's something that I don't want to play at some point, but I feel like my excitement from, a day one, I must play this, to kind of where I'm at now after spending I'd say about 2 hours with the demo. Pretty healthy demo. I mean, if you're interested, it is available, so go check it out. It's free, obviously, to see if it's something you're interested in. And I'm glad the demo actually came out, because I was probably going to buy this kind of like day one sight unseen. And after playing it, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not quite there yet. We'll jump into the combat part in a moment, but from the very first frame, this game is so beautifully stylized. I love what they did here with the kind of combination of the 2D with the 3D, with the voiceovers, with that kind of depth of field play that they do, where some things are blurry and some things are more kind of pixelated in the background. They did such a phenomenal job with the art of this game, and it's really stylized so beautifully. All the characters are completely voice acted in the kind of cutscenes that you're seeing here. Very heavy in the dialogue. I think the first time you actually like do something in this demo is like 7 or 8 minutes in, I feel like. It's a very, very long time. There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of world building, a lot of characters discussing kind of what's going on and why, and then you kind of start trickling into some of the gameplay. What I also love about this particular style is that for some reason, all the heroes are left-handed. I don't know if this was something that was intentional or if it was like I always like to think left-handed heroes are a nod to Link from Legend of Zelda, because he was a lefty, and we don't really have a lot of left-handed love in video games. I'm not really sure, but like everybody's like left-handed, and I thought it was very odd that like the whole world is left-handed except for a handful of villains, but all the heroes definitely left-handed. And now that I told you that, just watch this and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I thought that was kind of funny too. But so very stylized game. You have this kind of overworld grid where you're going to move your heroes around. You're going to basically select, this is the demo builds up, right? You're going to eventually have more than one set of units, but it builds up in such a way that like you basically issue your orders. Like, you're going to go left, you're going to go right, you're going to go here, you're going to defend here. All, like I said, the high level kind of macro stuff. And then you're going to basically execute your strategy. So you're going to have everybody can move in a certain distance. They're going to attack, defend, whatever. Look at all those left-handed people, right? So what happens, though, is after you basically set the game into motion, you're done playing. you're not controlling what your characters do. They're 100% pre-programmed, basically off a list of commands that you have selected. And I was watching the demo, like when this is starting, right? Like up until now, the only input I've given, I moved my analog stick like a little bit to the left, and then I hit X. That's all I did. And then the character starts moving, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like our heroes here soundly defeating the enemy. We'll talk about the story later. But like the heroes here are soundly defeating the enemy, right? Like, okay, they're going to give me control of like, okay, now you're going to take a turn, and you're going to control the princess, or you're going to control the knight, or whatever. No. Everything is just automatically run. And it's kind of, it has like a fast forward feature in the game. So you can kind of like blow through this if you wanted to. And I kind of feel like that in itself is almost a little bit telling. I know that Fire Emblem does it too. But I feel like I had more control. I mean, I don't feel like I did. I know I had more control in that game than something like this. When you get into the party system, you basically are going to select conditionally what your characters do. You're going to give them a list of attacks that they can choose from, and you're going to give them a set of circumstances in which they'll do something. For example, a healer will heal at the end of her turn if anybody in your team gets hurt. Or, a knight will automatically charge an enemy who's weak. Or the guy with the shield, I forget what his name was. They'll have different classes. But he'll defend the first person that gets attacked on your team. And you basically let them run through that whole turn. The enemy attacks, you attack, or it depends on who engaged too. Like if you walk into the enemy, you go first. If they walk into you, they go first. You empty out your actions, they empty out their actions, and then it's over. Now, right now in the demo or this tutorial type section, these are all sound victories. So in other words, like the characters are killing the other team. But if there was any scraps of survivors left behind, they could fight again the next round. But it would take you back to that world map. So it's kind of like up to you as to like how aggressive you want to be or not. You may not kill everything in the first salvo. And that's kind of where the strategy starts to come into play. In my experience in playing the game, most of my engagements did not end in a sound victory. Most of my engagements were multiple attacks. And depending on how many overall points you have for each unit determines how many different rounds they can fight or if they get depleted. And if they get depleted, there are certain circumstances in which they can basically re-engage in the battlefield. So in other words, you have to build a diverse army, not just an individual character, but an army in order to be successful. If you put your best group together and you make the ultimate A-team of like 5 or 6 heroes, and they're going to do everything for you, and the rest of your team is going to basically just be like fodder in the background, you're going to very quickly lose because they're going to run out of these like victory points, essentially, or valor points, and they're going to just be dead in the water on the battlefield. So I understand the concept here, even though you're going to get to meet individual characters with their own stories and their own voice acting and art style and wants, ambitions, hopes, dreams, all these wonderful things. You can't fall in love with any single character because the game's not going to let you do that. You're going to have to flesh out your army. And that is the one thing, honestly, that draws me back in. And where I feel Fire Emblem kind of got it wrong in a sense, at least some of the earlier iterations of Fire Emblem, was that you could have 1 or 2 characters which are basically gods on the battlefield, and all your other characters could just kind of stand around and watch. And you could have 1 or 2 characters who would just destroy everything. Their armor rating was through the roof. They never got hit. They did basically, max damage against any type of character. They had multiple weapons on them to just be a formidable force. And here, there's much more balance that goes into play, which I really, really like. I like the idea that not every character is just instantly OP. Now, in the demo, you're going to play as a guy, Joseph, the knight. He's going to be somebody who's available to you. He's way higher level than everybody else. I'm not really sure why they did that in the demo, honestly. Maybe he's kind of like your crutch if you don't know what you're doing. But excluding him, everybody that you're going to play with is very evenly balanced against the enemy. And if you're not careful, you're going to lose. And I like that. I like that there's that kind of challenge that's put in place about trying to figure out what units go where. And again, because you're going to be fighting on these massive battlefields that I suspect will only get larger as you go deeper into the story, you're going to need to have multiple groups to be able to fight on your behalf, which is really cool. That said, I got to admit, it's insanely boring when you're sitting there watching your units march into the other units. And like in my case, my TV started, because it's HDR and it's like really bright. The OLEDs have this auto dim feature because they don't want to push like too many like static nits. In other words, my TV screen would start to go dark because I wasn't doing anything on the controller. And it's like, oh, he must have gone AFK essentially. And that's kind of weird because there's going to be long periods of time where you're just watching multiple engagements fight out. And like I said, most engagements aren't going to end like they did in this opening section where one group will soundly defeat the other. There will be a lot of back and forth. So you'll have maybe 4 different groups pushing the battlefield, fighting against 4 enemy groups, and they'll go back and forth each time once or twice. You could honestly be sitting there for up to 5 or 6 minutes in between button presses just watching the autoplay combat play out. And while I get the idea that you're going to spec out your heroes in meaningful ways and give them a good kit to be successful and give them the right, mix of healers and ranged and all these wonderful things, right? All the things that go into a fantasy role-playing game. You're going to have all that stuff. That's cool. But it does get a little boring when you're just sitting around and there's no sense of urgency or input at all by you. It's not like you could press a button to get a critical or you're doing controls in between. You're just sitting there. That's weird to me that you kind of set up the game almost at the beginning and then you just watch it play out. What that also means too, though, is that after you've built up what you feel is a good army and you march into battle, if you horribly screwed up, you're kind of not going to be able to pivot quickly. You're going to kind of have to, probably do some save scumming, honestly, to go back in time because you did something wrong. And I feel like that kind of takes away from some of the fun of the game. Look, 2 more left-handed dudes. I feel like that kind of takes away from some of the fun of the game because of that. So I'm not really sure, longevity in this. I feel like once you have that winning formula, you're fine. But then the game kind of morphs from a game into more of like a graphic novel type, where you have those kind of story games where you're reading tons of dialogue. And you might get an option or 2 in there, but for the most part, you're just watching. And I don't know how well that's going to resonate with a Western audience. And I don't know how well that's going to resonate with people who are expecting a little bit more hands-on. I mean, even when you're playing a game at a macro level like Starfield. I don't know, I have Starfield stuck in my head. StarCraft. When you're playing a game like StarCraft at the macro level, right? You still have control of individual characters if you want. You can say, you know what, I need to get micro here. I need to like burst, or I need to stem all my guys, or I need to siege up my tanks, or focus fire this enemy because things are going south. At least you have that fallback if you want. In a game like this, you don't. You can't say, you know what, I don't like the way this character's performing. I'm going to take control. I wish he'd hit this target instead. We're going to focus fire on the boss and try to burn him down instead of killing all the minions leading up to the boss, whatever happens to be. You don't get those kind of like YOLO moments because of the way the system works with this auto attack system. And that's, to me, that seems suspect. Now, you're going to spend a lot of time watching the story here. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. Like I said, the graphics are beautiful. It looks even better on an HDR display and just watching it at nice, nice big screen, right? But the story itself is actually very entertaining. I was actually hooked. I mean, just an hour or two into the story, like I wanted to know what happened next. And I know there's going to be so many twists and turns along the way. This is just how these games work. There's always going to be some crazy, like, oh, those left-handed people. There's going to be this crazy, like, ebb and flow of the story, right? That's just natural. So the idea is that this queen, basically at the beginning of the game, the queen you saw, her entire kingdom and all of her closest allies turn on her basically instantly. And in a kind of a desperate attempt to save her son, she takes her most trusted knight and basically says, hey, take my kid, leave this kingdom, go train him to be a great warrior, and when he's ready, give him this ring, this unicorn ring, and he'll understand what to do with it. And then she basically dies with her, remaining heroes, the last 2 or 3 people left in the kingdom that are loyal to her. She falls victim to this knight who's basically risen to power and throws the entire world under martial law. He basically rules the entire world. The kid who has escaped, Elaine, he grows up under the training of the knight Joseph, and like left-handed people, and he basically is kind of building this like pseudo rebellion essentially to try to fight back. And during one of the first encounters with a person that was like a boss, basically a boss fight that you do at the end, the ring goes off and just basically resets this dude's memory. And the guy basically says, I've been brainwashed. I don't know what happened, but like instantly all I knew was I had to be loyal to this knight. And I'm ready to be like loyal to you. So apparently this unicorn ring has the ability to kind of counteract this magical spell that has basically overtaken the entire world except for like 10 people, you being one of them, the player character Elaine. But everybody else is like stuck to this, and once you defeat them and they're weak enough, you can basically reprogram them to your cause. And that seems like it's going to be a pretty consistent loop through the game of fighting somebody, fighting a boss, and then getting them to join your army, which is awesome. I love that sense of conquest, of character development, of the character kind of like coming out of it like, whoa, what just happened? Why did I attack you? I'm so sorry. Let's be friends. And that's how you're going to build up your ranks. Based on what I saw from the layout of the army system, you're going to have a pretty big force by the end. Each individual group, you could put one guy in as a force. It's pretty stupid, but if you really wanted to, you could. But I think there are like 6 or 8 slots per group, and the GUI has like 12 or 16 slots. So you're talking a pretty massive force at the end. I'm not saying like a cast of thousands, but now that I understand what the idea of the game is, going back and looking at the key art where you see all these character portraits on the cover art, it's like, oh wow, there's a lot of people, and there's going to be more too. So the story's awesome. It's fully voice acted, and you're gonna have favorites. I know I did instantly. There's instantly characters that resonated with me. I'm like, I like this dude, or I like this girl, like instantly. And I want to see where they go. I want to see how they interact in the story and what involvement they have and kind of how, where it progresses. It's just that combat system I have a hard time kind of wrapping my head around. So those are my thoughts on this game. I like it. It's not perfect, but I could see where if you're a deep fan of a very engrossing lore, I think this game is going to deliver. Atlas West does some amazing stuff. Their resume is no joke. They've done a lot of very, very popular games with deep story elements and, deep character connections and fan favorites and that sort of thing. And when you put that whole package together with a great story and a pretty in-depth combat system and a beautiful artistic style with lots of voiceover work, I think you have the recipe for a smash hit. It's just not my cup of tea. But I wanted to do this video and give this game its proper recognition, because even though it's not like my favorite game of all time, I can absolutely respect the care and love that went into it. And just in, like I said, in just a few hours, I was already starting to develop, you know, real feelings for this story in this universe. Like, I want to know what happens next. That's why I said I think at some point I probably will get to it. But there's too much other stuff right now, I feel like, for me, that is of higher priority than this. But yeah, check it out. It is available right now. I don't know if it's on Xbox. I know it's on PlayStation because that's where I recorded this footage from. I know it's on Nintendo as well. But this is a gem of a game, I think. And if you haven't ever played a Fire Emblem game, or you haven't ever played one of these kind of long-form RPG games, I think this would be a phenomenal entry point for anybody who has never experienced something like that, because of just how accessible it is. That wraps up today's thoughts on the game. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.